Today I'm going to be resuscitating my 1981 Yamaha XS1100, or XS11 for short. It's an old superbike, 1100cc, about 95 horsepower from the factory. I have a few mods done to it, but quite honestly I have no idea what kind of power it makes. All I know is that it makes so much torque that a lot of times it scares the shit out of me, so I don't push it. So this guy's been sitting here in my garage. As you can probably see, it's a little buried. It's been sitting here for about 2 years. I haven't really been able to ride it, just mainly due to shoulder problems. But hopefully everything is fixed and alright, and I'll actually be able to take it for a spin and see how far I get on it. Most likely I'm going to have to move up these clip-on bars that are clipped under the triple tree over here. Raise that up so I can have a more reasonable riding position, because as you can see right now, it's like you're pretty much laying on the tank. Alright guys, I pulled the bike out of the corner so you can get a good look of it, what it actually looks like, not when it's buried. So here's from the side. The back seat's not actually bolted down or wired up. It's just kind of sitting on there. Just from the front. So basically what I have done to the bike, other than I have fork gaiters right here. These are from Dime City. They seem to dry rot and break every single year, but they're definitely the best fitting and the best looking ones. The other ones are usually huge and just kind of flop around in the wind. So this is what I have to put up with. Maybe I'll try oiling them or doing something. They just seem to always crack. They get dry rotted. But I guess I can't complain because I think they're not that expensive. I think they're like 15 or 20 bucks for them. But other than that, I have the wheels painted black, these white wall Shinko tires, only the best. It's got a Terrazzi fork brace, made in Italy. Don't know how old this thing is, got that on eBay. I think these are like MGO headlight mounts. It's more eBay metal turn signals, because I had black plastic ones, but I think I ended up breaking one of them and just said screw it. The speedometer is actually off of, I think it's an XS650, because for whatever reason, being that this bike is an 81, the speedometer I think only went to about 85, and there was a line at 55 because that was the national speed limit. But from the factory, the top speed of this bike it's like 136. Don't quote me on that though. But I mean, it's an old school super bike. It's an 1100cc bike. It was one of the fastest in the world for. I think it was the fastest production bike in the world for probably about a year. And they went and put the dinkiest speedometer on. So now I can actually go up to 140. Not that I'm ever going to do that though, because it's like riding an antique. It's too much. Other than that, clip-on bars, right from eBay. And I actually had to make my own handlebar here, because the actual handlebar piece that came with these clip-ons, the inner diameter was too small for my bar end mirrors to fit into. So that I had to make with a pipe cutter. Turned out pretty well though. Super bar grips. I have pod filters on it too. Wonderful eBay type as well. I do have the bike rejetted, so it's not perfect, but it's definitely a lot better than slapping pod filters on and running the stock jets, because you're just going to screw it up. You're just giving it the wrong amount of fuel. And I have read the plugs and everything too. Another thing that I had to read the plugs for was the exhaust. It's a Mac 4.2. The battery box I actually made out of an old ammo can. This is the bottom of it. It's kind of hard to tell just when you're looking at it. If you look closely, you can see it's cut. Right now it's sitting on its side. This would be the top of it, and it's hinged, so it kind of just folds down, and then you can slide the battery out of this side, which is pretty cool. Alright, I'll show you guys some new parts that I have for it. Here's a tank. Basically, it's just in much nicer shape. As you can see on this guy, there's small scratches and stuff, but for the most part, there's no dents that I can really see. I think there's one small one. If you look very, very closely on the side, I forget where it is. Oh yeah, it's right here. It's right on the back. I might be able to pop that out with the suction cup, but I don't really know if it's worth it. But I don't think I paid a whole lot for it. It's in pretty good shape. I was going to line it, maybe attempt to pull that dent out, probably rebuild the petcocks on them because they're in pretty good shape. This is a Rock City fiberglass seat with their matching fiberglass seat pad, which as you can see is very, very thin and very uncomfortable, although it looks really cool, I will admit. I have an LED trailer light on the back of it. This is probably, I think, the best looking light for if you have a flat back to it. I had to do a little bit of dremeling to this guy to get it to fit. Otherwise, what would happen is the tire would come up and collide with that, that's bad. That'll definitely break it. So, the new seat, though, is the elusive Mike's XS650 seat. And this guy, it actually, size-wise, I think, fits perfectly with the proportions of this bike. You would think that this should be for a larger bike, but it actually fits pretty well. Yep, so that's what it looks like. I was thinking about taking the chrome off and painting it black, but I don't think it looks that good. I love how it says Yamaha on the back of it too. I got the carbs off, got the tank off, the batteries out. I actually forgot that when I made this battery box, it actually doesn't open up all the way. It doesn't go too far. It does give you enough room to sort of get in there and wiggle the battery around, but basically what you got to do is take it out of the top. It just doesn't really fit any other way. I think the reason that it doesn't open any farther is because there's like a piece under here that I'd have to slice off. That's kind of a part of, the original frame and everything, the original mount. I didn't want to go that far as to cutting it off, but I guess at this point it would probably make a lot of sense. I don't know why I didn't, go all the way and actually do it. Considering that for the seat, I actually cut off the original turn signal mounts, which are right beyond this point, where the signals, they kind of screw into like this big semicircle. It's very strange. I don't even know how to describe it. Originally, this bike didn't have a hoop that went all the way around. I know a lot of older Hondas do. I think some Kawasaki's, maybe it's not Kawasaki that has it. But with Yamaha, the only thing really tying together the very back of the frame is the fender, which I don't have anymore, and it's flimsy sheet metal anyway, so it's not like it really does much. You can see my original seat mounting idea, which actually I made out of pipe clamps, because a lot of people, they like to drill into the frame and then they'll have a bolt going through it. Well, I didn't want to do that, so I used these little pipe clamps instead, and then basically what I used was all thread and square stock. I know I have them, actually here's one, sort of like this. I had two of them going across, and then I used what are called elevator bolts to hold the seat to the rails themselves. And it seemed to work pretty well. I mean, it held up for a few seasons. I also want to come up with something better for, mounting these little bits and pieces. Like I have the main fuse box you can see down here. It's Velcroed to the side of the battery box. But in terms of the other ignition controller and whatnot, they're kind of just, smushed under there above the battery. So when you want to take the battery out, you have to undo everything. It's kind of a pain in the ass, but I mean, it looks nice. It keeps everything nice and tidy, keeps it out of there. I love the look of bikes where the frame is just kind of wide open and you can see right through them. And that's sort of what I was going for. Although I didn't fully go all the way and what I could have done is hid a smaller battery in the hump on the very back of the original seat. Now that I have this fully padded seat, I can't really do anything like that anyway. Alright guys, I broke down all 4 of the carbs. Sorry I didn't get any video of the actual process of pulling the little floats out and the little float needles as well, but my camera died. So basically I have everything just laid out right here. You have your float, the little needle. I'm not going to take the seats out. I think I'm just going to spray some carb cleaner down into them just to get everything sort of cleaned out, and probably, I guess, clean around the edges. One of these gaskets actually kind of split when I was taking it apart. I think that one had been replaced before. All the other ones are sort of the same. They may be original, but I've never had any issues with them leaking. But I guess I'll just cut a new gasket for this guy, being that I split it on the end here, and see if I can fire it later. I have the battery on the charger right now, and it seems to be charging. The charger's not complaining about it. It's not telling me the battery's dead or giving me a fault. Alright, so something weird I just discovered for this last float needle over here. I didn't even notice. The very tip of the float needle came apart. They're supposed to look like this guy right here, where it's the little bottom piece is still attached. And I believe this one I replaced, because when I originally got the bike, I think 1 or 2 of the float needles was stuck. But some of them are still original. They're from the 80s. So that's not supposed to happen. That's bad. That could be why that there's always sort of been... I never had the fueling for this bike perfect. There was always something a little weird about it. That could definitely be a contributor. I noticed that one of these slides wasn't moving as well as it could have been. So I decided to go ahead and take all the slides out, clean all their bores, clean everything up. Now everything seems pretty much perfect. So what I'm going to do, hopefully if the store's not closed, I'm going to go out and get better screws, because a lot of these are pretty much stripped at the top. I'll replace them with stainless ones, pretty much do the same thing that I did for the bowls for all these little carburetors. But yeah, hopefully that should be fine. I guess tinker with the idle screws a little bit, just make sure that they're nothing seized before I go and put everything back together. But yeah, I guess I'm gonna have to wait for these little float needles in the mail, and then I'll return.